that we don't see today. Part of that was from the basically elimination of the Nephilim through King David, and kind of wiping our hands of that. But it is interesting, and the studies I was looking at, part of that was on there. Let's see if I can from the screens around here. Basically, and get rid of this one because it's in my way. Yeah, so I mean, before we jump into this is really interesting. Paul does warn Titus, and by the way, back then Paul knew of the book of Enoch, and the Enoch actually has whole the whole timeline of and descendancies of the Nephilim and the angels and things like that. And since the war basically was already done, he warns Titus, but avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, quarrels, and fights about the law because they are useless and empty. So in a sense, in the New Testament, it does say, hey, we really don't have to worry about the giants. This is already done. The Nephilim is already done. It's already been taken care of. Arguing over this is pointless. So essentially, Paul is telling the Christians at this point, and specifically to Titus, from my understanding, that, hey, the whole thing this episode is on today is kind of pointless. We don't really have to worry about it, but I still find it really interesting. So we're still going to talk about it. And kind of diving into some of the things that I was looking at in this, right, is we have the first mention in Genesis 6:4 that the Nephilim were on earth in those days, and also after this, when the sons of God would sleep with the daughters of humankind, who gave birth to their children. They were the mighty heroes of old, the famous men. We in this first passage, this is kind of where I was saying I could see some logic in here that we're not actually talking about giants at this point. We're saying that we have the sons of God, and if we look at the descendants of Adam and Eve, I mean, we could look at their descendants as like the direct sons of God, and obviously everybody is to a certain point. But when we actually have this direct lineage from one off, these could be our mighty heroes. These could be the mighty men. And then we had a divorce of the men with Cain and Abel, between wicked and good. So I find, kind of when we're looking at these words directly, it is interesting in the very first passage, if we want to look at it in direct translation, that we could come to that type of consensus. But there are three major consensuses out there that the Nephilim were actually fallen angels or demons. And these demons basically bred and created the Nephilim. There's another idea that from that division of Cain and Abel, that these were the descendants of Cain, where this just keeps everything on planet Earth from Adam and Eve. Doesn't bring in any other new species, doesn't bring in any angels or demons. This is just basically from the genealogy of Adam and Eve and the splits that happened over that time. And then there's another idea that the Nephilim actually were always here. They were a separate group, and they were actually unrelated to the sons of God. The sons of God still went and propagated with wives. I'm sure there's some other views out there. But it is interesting, how different divinities look at these things. It gets really interesting when we bring in the book of Enoch, because that adds a whole new depth to a lot of these things when we actually start looking at the movies. Like, they're not getting it from the Old Testament. There's not much in the Old Testament except for that we basically had the Nephilim, and then we had the Akim, which then we had the Palestinians that had the giant that was Goliath that David defeated, and there were still more giants, and King David's tribe and warriors and even some of his brothers defeated the rest of the giants, and then we never see giants again in the Bible. And then we have our letter to Paul, or to Titus from Paul, saying, that's already been done. We don't really have to worry about this anymore. I'd love to get into this with our panelists, so I'm going to bring up who we've got online right now. Let's see. Let me get rid of this screen. And I'm sure, like Beth, by the way, She's been a regular panelist on this, but she's actually our guest star. She doesn't even know it. This is a surprise to her because this is one of her favorite topics. So I'm going to put her on the spot a little bit here in knowing a lot more about this stuff and a lot more ideas about these things than I do. So welcome, Beth. Welcome, Cleaner. Welcome, Taylor. Tyler, shoot. Which one are you? You're the Taylor, right?
Nope, other way. This one's
Tyler.
Okay.
Tyler. The other one's
Tyler.
Where is Dusty?
I was dyslexic as a child, so like having those two on the panel, just like
my mom does the same thing with me and my brother. It's all right.
So I did kind of jump into this. I have to apologize. Like I literally sat down at my desk from being out with the family all day, 10 minutes before this started. So as well prepped as I normally am. But I am excited to dig into this and look into some of your guys' understanding of this and that. But before we do that, I want to shamelessly plug that I will be on Sarah's channel next Friday on a 1v1, that there is no deep state against Teriak. So please make sure you jump in and check out that debate and post lots of wins for me when I destroy him in the chat, because the chat always wins. If I lose, I give you permission to put L also. Beth, go ahead. You've got a brand new channel. Please promote it.
Yeah. So my new channel is called Culture Corrections. It's Culture Corrections 315 on YouTube. I had to pick numbers because, of course, don't you know that name is somewhat taken. We're having open discussions, open debates, hosting debates, and it's off to a really good start. I'm really lucky to have support of some really awesome people. What else do you want from me?
We don't want anything else from you.
Okay. I woke up like 15 minutes ago. We're having high windstorm here. All my settings and everything like reset, and I turned on my computer to everything being screwed up. So,
well, it is the uncomfortable Bible study. So, if I don't make everybody uncomfortable, we're not really achieving the goal, are we?
I'm so lucky.
All right, and Cleaner, he's all over the place. He's judging, he's debating. He is a great personality. I think most people love out there. Do you have anything you want to promote, Cleaner?
Yeah, I don't claim to be Orthodox Christian myself. I just am trying to learn the worldview and understand it, because I would at some point like to be a part of the church if I could. So just so that people understand, I'm only giving my understanding that I have right now if I speak on something here. I'm not claiming to speak for the church in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of important for most of us that are believers. I definitely can't. I mean, I've been mentioning this on the last two episodes. I've been digging in, and I'm like, oh, this makes sense. And I'm sitting here talking to the world, saying this is what makes sense to me. And then I was like, maybe I should talk to my pastor and find out if this is even in line with my own church. Being from a Protestant church whose background was Baptist, I'm finding most of our stuff lines up, but there are definitely some other things. And he's given me some books to read. So I don't think any of us claim, as I said at the beginning, to be experts, but maybe some of us do. I'll leave that to those, but I definitely don't know. So definitely don't come to me for the truth of the Bible. That's something I would love to understand. And I think when I sit there at the pearly gates, he'll finally grant me that wish.
Chew with your mouth closed, Tyler.
I should mention real quick too that I agree with what Cleaner said. By no means, like, nothing I say is actually even really probably accepted by the church. That looks really good. While this is one of my favorite subjects, by no means am I like an expert on it. So yeah, I tried to invite the expert.
So since I carried the body of Christ today at church, I actually do speak for the church today. So everything I say is backed by whatever church I'm claiming.
Oh, yeah, your wife just struck you, didn't she?
And you're attending a Catholic church?
What kind of church is it again?
Oh, he froze mid chicken wing.
No,
Roman Catholic. It's carrot cake. Roman Catholic.
Oh, yeah. Carrot cake. And then you're doing a bunch of things. Anything you want to promote? Because I'm seeing you on debates all over the place. I know you guys are trying to get your channel up and running.
Right now, Pentuple, myself, and Druid are starting a podcast. We just finished recording episode 2 yesterday. I went through about 2 power weeks of debates, and then last week I pretty much took off. I had one debate last night, and that's it, and kind of just took a little mini vacation. Now just TwitchCon and my podcast. That's about all that's going on right now. I'll get back into the rotation, but yeah, I just took a week off.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah, it'd be a pain in the ass. I forgot. I have a debate right after the show tonight, being hosted on the Powdered Dusty. It's going to be a women's only 2v2 on is Christianity good for women in modernity. So.
Oh, that's interesting. I know there's a lot of men that aren't Christians that think that Christianity is bad for women. I actually get trashed quite a bit. They're like, must be horrible to be his wife. Because us Christian men are so evil to our wives. Big shout outs to the Steel Man, Agrillipus, Def Not Test. Glad to see you guys. Marilyn, thank you for showing up. Looking forward to get this started. So I do want to start in kind of investigating what are the Nephilim and what is your understanding of what the Nephilim are? Like, I kind of gave a quick, brief summary of 3 of the major ideas of like from demons, from Cain. They were already here. I'm very interested in Beth's take here. I actually read a lot, or I read and watched a lot, and I was much more confused about the whole idea than I thought I was when I came in. Yeah, who are the Nephilim?
Okay, sure. I'll go right on it. So the idea behind the Nephilim that I tend to prescribe to is that in the beginning, of course, we had the second rebellion in heaven where the Watchers fall to Earth, or they come to Earth and create giants, or it would be the Nephilim with the women of Earth. And while they're here, they teach human beings also a lot of stuff that we weren't supposed to know. And this leads up to Noah's flood, and why God ends up, destroying the earth is essentially to deal with the Nephilim. Sorry, cat knocking notes off the bed. So in the beginning, though, I totally sorry, my bad. Okay, I'm here. The point, though, is that after this happens, you see where some things pick up as far as you've got David and Goliath, where Goliath is listed as being, he and his brothers are all listed as being giants. So there's a lot of question as to if all of the Nephilim were killed in the flood, then why do we still have them? And it is believed within some circles that the creation of Nephilim never actually stops, right? It comes down to the enemy poisoning the bloodline because we are image bearers of God. So that's where I've been following it too. I'm sorry, I'm a slight mess right now.
Yeah, so it does get a little confusing, and like the next one, which I'm gonna have to do a lot of research on to even like fully understand the flood, because I used to think I understood the flood. And as you mentioned, like I was thinking, okay, we got all this impurity. We have that God basically does this flood to basically fix all the impurities and come back from the original sinless, or not sinless, but noble bloodline from Adam, right? And we have in Numbers, right, 13:32 to 33, then they presented the Israelites with the discouraging report of the land they had investigated, saying, the land that we passed through to investigate is a land that devours its inhabitants. All the people we saw there were of great stature. So that sounds like a giant. We even saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of the Anak came from the Nephilim, and we seemed like grasshoppers both to ourselves and to them, right? So this is a report in Numbers, which is after the flood, that they're still there. So if the flood was supposed to get rid of them, and God did that, like, well, now the flood had to be for something else, because I don't think God actually would have failed if that was God's goal, if that was his only goal.
Getting into my groove here too, by the way, it's also scripturally they're referred to as the men of renown and the heroes of old. So what you'll see when you start looking at the other civilizations of ancient times is that you actually do end up with almost every civilization has stories that line up with things that we read, like in the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants and some of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is where it is believed that the myths like Achilles and Hercules and all of them came from, was they would have been Nephilim. So not even necessarily giants, but also these human beings who technically would have, I guess, been considered hybrid if their fathers were the Watchers, because they're not fully human, but they also end up having some superhuman qualities to them. And I'm pretty sure you'll find scripture in our regular Bible pertaining directly to that one.
Yeah, I think I saw something that was measuring them, the giants, and they were actually more cubits than the length of the ark.
That one potentially, but then again, I mean, so I have a lot of questions when it comes to that, because also pre-flood we see that human beings, scripturally speaking, lived a lot longer. So potentially,
yes, hundreds.
Potentially after the flood, maybe they don't grow as tall, for the simple fact that the lifespans have been shortened of everyone on Earth. It's an interesting question that a lot of people are debating about, that actually look into this stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, we can see that. I mean, I'm sure there can be firsthand accounts, right? But given fear, I mean, my children can give a first-hand account of a giant that stands almost half the height of our house, but that's just their perspective. Doesn't mean they actually saw that, right? And it would be a first-hand account, and in their mind, based on either their fear, their misjudgment, their perspective. Even if it's a first-hand account, doesn't necessarily make it accurate. So, I don't know. How about you, Cleaner? I mean, have you looked into or have any understanding of this whole area?
A little bit, yeah. What I understand of it, like you've already said, the Nephilim were the fallen ones, so to speak, the sons of God that were here on Earth, and some of them had nefarious intent. And the giants, as I understand it, were, and it kind of depends on what Bible you look at. Some of the Bibles decree that like the giants were Nephilim. Some of them say they were products of Nephilim. So there's kind of there's a split in some of the different Bibles about that. When we're talking about NASB, it says the Nephilim were giants.
Yeah.
And like my understanding of it is like when that came to pass, it was seen as a bad thing and disrupting what God created, which was humanity, human beings, by introducing giant DNA, so to speak, into humanity. And yeah, so before the ark and the flood and all that stuff, we supposedly had much longer lifespans. My curiosity for a while, like the scientist side of me, has this curiosity that I can't help but kind of have this inkling that perhaps those of us who are here now are either the more purified form of God's human construction, or are we somehow the descendants of a slightly less tainted form Because if humanity lived, like if human beings lived for hundreds of years before, was that a product of Nephilim breeding? Or is what we are now possibly a product of that? Or were we stripped of something when all this happened so that we were given a much shorter lifespan? I have a lot of science questions about it. I don't think they'll be answered, but they are curiosities.
I really like that approach. And we'll
Good, thank you.
hand it over to
Good.
the next guy who's not in the believer area about it. But I also try to use my science mind often to look at these things, right? And if we were living, like if Adam and Eve were living hundreds of years, right? It starts off, and I'm sure the chat's going to correct me here, but it starts off like in the 600s, maybe even the 800s, and then goes down to like the 600s and the 400s before we get into like what the average human lifespan is today. So in a sense, Adam and Eve and even their descendants, if they were living that long, they could have been much more giant in the sense of men, right? And like when I'm reading through the terminology in that first Genesis 6:4, right? It talks about the sons of God and it talks about the Nephilim. And I don't necessarily think that it's saying that the Nephilims were the sons of God or that you could have the Nephilim and you could have the sons of God. And when you look through, when I did my own research on this before I actually asked like the internet, like, is there any other philosophies on there? I looked through the Bible, trying to sort out, could the sons of gods just have been like some of the original long living, basically leaders of the everything after Adam and Eve, right? They were considered giants because they were the ones that started the tribes. One of the tribes would have been on Cain's side. Like, obviously, Cain failed until the very end, where he tried to build a whole city. But they were the leaders. They were the constructors, right? They were considered these sons of God, and they were more mighty. And then if we look at my view, like if I'm trying to go just on my understanding of what I see today and apply it to the Bible back then, which might be the wrong view, I could see if Cain's leaders, right, he is a son of God, even if he doesn't represent that, started propagating with Abel's kids, right, or daughters or granddaughters or whatever, and corrupting the good bloodline. And we had this corruption of the good bloodline. To me, this is something I could actually tell as a story today without having giants and without having Nephilim, but giving them names. But maybe there was a whole. I mean, maybe there were the fallen. We know there were angels. We cannot contest that from the Old Testament or the New Testament. There's angels all over the place, right? But we only have a few passages about the Nephilim. I saw somebody argue that the reason we don't talk about it in our current canon is because basically everybody already knew about it. These people had already been around. They were walking around. There was no need for a description. Us, they were never walking around. Therefore, we're like, well, what is this? Why doesn't the Bible tell us more? And then some will go, hey, you can look at the book of Enoch. It does tell you more, but that's not in our canon. I see Beth having some thoughts there.
Well, here's the big thing: is it's like, yes, we know that there's angels. We know that God created angels. Where would you think that demons and demonic forces would come from? If we follow what Enoch says and what some of the older texts say when it comes down to the Nephilim are the product of angels procreating with human women, and after that is when they become the demons that we know of today. Sorry, teenagers just got to my house. Telling you, it's an evening. Bunch of them have no power, so they're all here now. So yeah, that's where our demons would come from, is from the flood primarily, I think it is, and it's after that and before, because the Watchers, which would have been the angels who came down to Earth, were also the ones that are locked up, and we see that they're locked up in places like there's 2 under the Euphrates. Of course, I don't have those notes right handy. Like, there's actual Bible verses discussing where several of them are locked up, and even other ones discussing that Tartarus was created specifically to hold the Watchers as well as their Nephilim offspring.
And
Well,
Tartarus is one of our hells that we were talking about last episode.
see, I think this is all really interesting because as we understand the angels, they're genderless. Like typically, they look more masculine whenever they're represented, like so that we can understand what they look like, so to speak, or artist representations and whatnot. They're typically masculine. However, my understanding is like from the Bible, they are genderless and they're not capable of reproducing. So
I
like it kind of begs the question, did that too change at some point, or what is that, has that always been the baseline for angels? And if it did change, is there just not something explaining to us that it did, or have they never changed and this was miraculous conception, so to speak, much like how Jesus was born from God, right?
I think that is a myth on the gender
yeah
list that was created by a book or media when I was reading
yeah
through last week on some things. But there's no, even in the uncanon, I don't think it's in the canon, and I don't even think it's in the non-canons. But I could be wrong. But I thought I did stumble across that. I just didn't put a note on that.
I had seen that somewhere as well. That is primarily something that it's interesting because if you ask Google, they say it says that angels do not have gender. But I know for a fact I read somewhere that that's like fake news or something. And I think it does come down to how what the hell was it? I found it when I was actually doing studying for one of our more recent
Me
episodes,
too. Me too.
and I can't remember where I found it. It's like, um, I think that if we are all right, so God creates humans in His own image. I would assume that the angels would be as well. I don't think there's anything that actually precludes.
Well, I mean, if you want to play the logic game, in a sense, God would have to be neither, right? Because God didn't propagate to make himself. He doesn't have a wife, from what we know. He didn't have two parents.
That depends on which belief structure you ask. Some say that he does.
Oh,
It's interesting.
and what are their parents? What does his parents do?
Oh
Are they
Lord,
retired?
I have no idea. The whole story is so weird. Like I'm literally just poking fun at. I think it's the Gnostics who say, or no. It's in Judaism, where there is a feminine. Oh crap! This was another one that I actually found.
Well, there are references to the genderlessness of or the sexlessness of angels in the Bible. Um, I think it's in here. I've got one pulled up. Matthew 22:30. It says, "For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels of God in heaven." So they don't like,
Well,
and I don't know if that's like a
that
should
speaks to
claim.
marriage, not gender.
Well, right, but in those times, if you didn't get married, you weren't supposed to do the deed. Um, but I get it doesn't specify explicitly right there, but there's a number of them that kind of hint at it, but none of them come right out and say it from what I've read. But there's a lot of things that we also see that we have to understand from how the biblical texts were written back then, like when they were written.
Well, why would there need to be marriage or procreation um in in heaven at that point, right? I mean, not to say that, I'm sure we're all sorry, I was reading something. I'm sure we'd all like for that to be there. But what's the utility of it, right?
Uh,
I think that verse is speaking more to the utility of it.
I mean, it may be, but I think the utility understanding was that angels did not reproduce and create more angels. God created the angels, and that was it. Like there wasn't angels having more angel babies. So again, I know that isn't explicitly stated, but it's like an understood thing that we don't see any references of new angels being born. So you know, if they were capable of reproducing, would we not have some kind of reference of the angels having made angel babies or new angels with each other? Uh,
There's, I would say there's no need to. There's no need for the utility of it. If God can create his, let's say, his own workforce, right? He doesn't need them to repopulate themselves, especially since they are eternal beings.
so, I
So
mean, would the
therefore,
entailment
if
of that be
something's
that they
gonna,
couldn't, or that they just didn't? And if they just didn't, then why did they later then did with humans?
it's a good question. If you look at what it says in Enoch, it's that they're overtaken by the beauty of human women. Um, and there's a whole thing, especially like within like some Kabbalistic belief structures that like essentially that God made woman despite the devil, um, which is funny in the sense of he made women more spiteful and manipulative and more beautiful and tempting than the devil himself, just to pretty much essentially for to put it more loosely, give the devil the finger. Um, so in that case, it would make sense for male angels to potentially be just as taken with them. However, again, I mean, so then we could even make the argument that maybe all the angels are in fact sons of God and there are no female angels, right?
They're the evil ones that are in hell.
Mhm.
Well, they did create the demons.
I didn't want to interrupt.
Once it came down, you see where a woman will lead a guy. Next thing you know, I mean, you're sitting up in heaven. Life's wonderful. Your job's to watch human beings. You're like, damn, that chick is fine. You go, you make a baby, and the next thing you know, you're condemned to be a demon for the rest of eternity.
She was a
Oh,
succubus. Yep, she was a succubus. I understand. I didn't want to interrupt you guys' circle jerk, but I wanted to get to real quick some of my
come
notes
on.
on the subject here. So I
I want to hear what you have to say. So this is great.
I feel this is like a carryover. So yeah, as we discussed in the early episodes, I see older religions kind of being the cornerstone for what we see Abrahamic religions turned into. We can see a lot of those myths repeat. The one here is the inception of Hercules. I see that to be a lot like the children of God, and these heavenly beings come down and suddenly develop the desires of the flesh and now want to reprocreate and form these giant people that we have no proof that they existed. So we already went over how the flood didn't happen, at least when it was claimed biblically, and if it did, it wasn't nearly as bad as it was. But what we also saw in these past times where people would take these phenomena, these oddities, these things that they couldn't explain, and they would attribute them to mystical forces, oftentimes their deities. So they see a Canaanite or a Philistine that's 6-7 feet tall, as their actual corpses suggest they were, and they're like, whoa, look at that giant motherfucker over there. And then they gave him a telephone and retelling stories. You end up getting, some guy that's just, could probably dunk a basketball is now suddenly a mystical giant while all these other 4'5" people are running around. So I could also see, going off that same idea, that Goliath could be a similar story to Corn Pop. Like, you remember the 2021 election? Corn Pop was a bad dude, He was giving David some problems with the switchblade. David wrapped his chain bola around his hand and threatened him, and then David went back to his lifeguard job, and the kids would play with his hairy legs. I think that's how the story went. I think that's how the story went, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so
It went something like that.
yeah.
Something like that.
I don't know. I could see also that like the reason why this isn't spoken about, you don't hear about it. I've been going to church now, so I'm basically an expert for like I've been 3 times, so I'm kind of professional at it. Yeah, I've never heard the Nephilim brought up. The first time I ever heard this word was playing Diablo, the Blizzard game. You're called a Nephilim. I think it starts in Diablo 3 or maybe 2. I'm not 100% sure. And I was like, what the hell is that? And I looked it up and I'm like, I've never heard of this. This isn't something you hear about in religion very often. I think it's just carryover from previous religions that they're trying to like phase out of the canon. They can't officially remove it, but it's just kind of like, we're just not going to bring it up anymore because it's kind of silly. I think the only viable theory based on evidence we have is the Sons of God theory, that would be indistinguishable people that could take other forms, even non-corporeal forms, so they could like vanish and they're immortal. So if any of these things are real, that's the only one I think we can't disprove, because we don't have any, we're not going to get a corpse of them to analyze as we would a giant if it actually existed. And my last question here is, if Dusty is about to host a debate, why the hell isn't he here? Where has Ryan been for over the last month? Why am I the only skeptic left? And does this technically make them scumbags?
Well,
All right.
Dusty said he was on his way in. I'll message him again. And Ryan, I have no clue. What is wrong? He must have gave up. He was too close.
Ryan did apologize last time. He said he had something else that came up, and then I saw him 2 minutes later on Sarah's channel. So Sarah's got more followers. We know where that went.
Yep.
Oh, and we've got Taylor Swift.
Ryan is the deceiver.
That Judas.
He is,
I
right?
mean, it kind of sounds to me like
Taylor Grift.
Oh, look, it's Rob's play toy.
Rob's play toy. You mean the pudgy gay man?
No, I watched that whole thing unfold. He was not giving you the best of faith in the world, but what's up?
Oh, he was giving me the worst of faith. They're running the play.
I think you're connected to the wrong mic, Dusty. And then when you're done, you can tell us what you think about what the Nephilim are.
Yeah, I just got done with my rant.
But I like your rant. Taylor, I like your
rant about women.
Oh my goodness.
I'm upset.
I like Taylor's rant, right? Like saying, hey, it's pulling from old mythology, right? And if there is this mythology and there are other groups out there, are they not going to, when they see, like you said, a 6'10" Palestinian warrior, go, oh my God, they were Hercules-like, right? Or they're Nephilim-like, and they're going to pull from their own knowledges of all the other religions out there. So I could see how you could draw that. It is interesting because maybe, I don't know, maybe Cleaner's on to something, and trying to look at it in a scientific view here. There is this might be what Cleaner was talking about in Hebrews 1:14. It does. What is the exact thing here? I actually pulled it up. It says, but to which of angels has ever been said, oh, wait, no, 14, here we go. Are they not ministering spirits? And the idea behind spirits is a spirit itself, a ghostly like thing, cannot have a gender, right? It can't reproduce. It can't do any of these things. So, like, in a sense, we could actually say, even if there were angels and they are fallen and there's demons, the demons didn't have the capability of reproducing. And we could actually take this, like I was saying in the beginning, that these men of God were the leaders in the early times that were of giant stature, living super long, were reproducing with the women, especially from the corrupt side, and corrupting the bloodline of what was originally intended. And hence, when they saw Goliath. Goliath was this huge Philistine man of 6'10", and they just, equated him to the mythical people, or mythical Hercules. And the Bible wrote it as the Nephilim still there, or at this time, I think it was the Akim. In that particular sense, would that be something outside of something you would be agreeable to, Tyler?
First of all, I think that gender is more than just biological. I think it's in your psyche, right? Your
Well, yeah.
you-
So you don't even want to compare. First off, I mean, this is just stupid because there's a few. I mean, there's a lot of letters in the human spectrum. Now, in the angel spectrum, it's like exponential. So
in the angel spectrum, what the fuck are you talking about? The angel spectrum.
I mean, I don't.
Okay, we'll just move on
Look,
past
I
it.
don't
'Cause
think we're.
I should have played. I should have
The thing
played.
is, I think the thing is, we're not talking about like gender in our understanding of this stupid bullshit gender fluidity ideology of retardedness, right?
That
What
sort
we're
of sounds
talking
like
about-
what Vybe's going to.
What we're talking about is creatures breeding, which would come back to male and female creatures.
Okay.
So
yeah, you missed that part. We were actually just talking.
This,
Does an angel have the two parts? Now, when I said gender, I'm sorry, I mixed that. Men, there's a male gender and there's a male sex, and they're
Well,
the same.
I mean, either
Do-
way, gender and sex, I think, are the same thing, right? So either way,
Yep.
if I think
Yeah.
they have one, they have the other, and so I think both of them are deeper than just biology. But I don't mean to hang us up on a point that's past. Do I think that the Goliath and them could be the Nephilim could be the Hercules and shit? I mean, I see how I don't think any of that stuff is real. I think it's all legend. So I can see how they intertwine together. They weave together, sort of like there's flood stories everywhere. But I think that probably what's most likely is that David is the one who wrote the Bible. If you look at much of it, if you look at the Old Testament, David really shines. And if I were going to write a story about myself as a kid killing a giant, I think it's propaganda, honestly.
That's very possible. The thing is, though, that a lot of other civilizations, like way pre-David, have the same roots to the exact story when it comes down to the Watchers and the Nephilim story. So that, I mean, how's David going to influence?
Well, I
those
was just speaking to Goliath.
Well, sure.
But I mean that's the nature of mythology, right? What starts over here, what starts over here, they're similar enough. They meet, they blend, right? That's how culture has been working for all of humanity. So I would expect there to be similar stories that weave and wrap and intertwine.
This is all just confusing because Goliath is my stripper name. As you can see, I'm half giant from
knew
Bro,
it.
that's you. You can rock some high heels.
Yeah.
I didn't even recognize you.
I have to wear the heels, otherwise, Goliath hits the floor.
You've won the internet so far today. You get this W. This W's for you.
There's something wrong.
I do want you to bring your wife on to confirm that.
No,
Oh,
thank
do you
you.
think-
No.
She's too
Wait a
busy
second,
recovering.
Vybe.
What are you talking about?
Let's
don't wanna know.
remember the. Let's
I don't wanna
remember
know
the
anything
ceiling
about
fan
it.
injury a couple weeks ago. Whole new context now, isn't it?
What?
Remember, right before we were supposed to start the show, when
Oh,
the ceiling fan hit
I
Tyler
mean, like
in the head.
when we're talking about like what happened within the context of what we're talking
Yes.
about, it doesn't really matter if a male like Tyler was or was not supremely endowed. We're talking about like Nephilim and the breeding of angels with females. So males weren't even in the picture of that. Like human males weren't even in the picture. So this has nothing to do with the topic.
What?
So there.
Wow. Fun sucker. Suck all the fun
You're
out of it.
not so special after all, Tyler.
He's just mad because he's got a little one.
Yeah. You got a
They
Nephilim.
call him David. That's his stripper.
Oh. Oh.
Start while I'm waiting for them to come back. There we go.
Hey, we broke the internet.
Vybe was like, I just wanted to shake up the ant farm.
No, I think it's good now. It was definitely on my end. Everybody started like cutting out in and out, and I was just trying to close some stuff up here.
That's okay. Dusty's still fighting with that mic.
I didn't think that I was.
Oh, yeah. When you jiggled the cord, the feedback stopped for a second, and then it started right back up. It's a very low white noise, and you're still on the wrong mic, it sounds like. I'm gonna...
It might just be the plug-in wire too. Sometimes if you don't have it plugged in all the way, it'll produce that feedback.
Can't hear you, Cleaner. You're real quiet now.
I said it might also have to do with the microphone. If you don't have it plugged in all the way, sometimes it'll produce that feedback as well. So it might just be the plug.
Yeah, this cord's giving him shit for a minute now. Everyone got real quiet. Is it better? Ashley?
Sorry, I got off the flow where we were at here, right? So I know that we were kind of talking about it's all mythology, right? And I mean that's going to be Taylor's view, but Tyler was actually saying, hey, maybe if they weren't fallen angels, right? And maybe if these were just men of high stature, men building cities like Cain did in the end, right? Building a whole like empire of a city. This would be considered a god or amongst the men as a god of man. And
I don't think so. Not in order to like feed, like if you start looking at like Greek and Roman mythology, I think a lot of those characters come out of this. That's why it's like when I talk to, like people who prescribe to Norse beliefs, right? I'll actually affirm their belief and just tell them, sorry though, by my belief structure, your God has a lowercase g. That this is not a God. I mean, like, if we were to encounter an angel tomorrow, right, and they showed all their glory, they expressed their powers, they did all these things to prove that they're not just another human being, the average human is going to fall down and, probably think that they're interacting with a God. So...
Beth, you're gaslighting me. My mic is fine.
You're gaslighting me, too, with your opinion. No, I mean, if you look at like around that time period, the Mesopotamian civilizations, the Epic of Gilgamesh was about like a big, large man who was a great warrior, large in stature, and depicted as godly because of that. Where like, I walk into like, if I go to an Asian country, I'm 6'4", I got these giant guns, I'm perceived as a god to them as well. Most rooms I walk in, that's the case anyway. So, but yeah, like when you have these like larger than life characters that are able to do things that the average person can't just naturally, like you're looking for an explanation from that, and you could say like this one has godly blood and he was blessed with these genes in a way. I could see that being, again, other cultures around the growing Christian mythos have similar stories about figures that fit that criteria as well. So I think it's just really tall people, personally.
You think these stories that different cultures have, these quote unquote myths, they're loosely based around some larger than life representation of a person, like people trying to describe someone that is, bigger, stronger, has abilities better than humans, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
We have, what was that guy that had the giant blue oxen that traveled the United States?
Paul Bunyan.
There you go. We have our own.
Abe the oxen. Yeah.
Yeah. Blue oxens don't fucking exist, all right? The closest thing you got's a red one with the Buffalo Bills.
But, bro, do you think that maybe they had blue oxens? Those were Nephilim oxens.
There you go. We have our own Nephilim myth, with, what's his name? Buffalo Bill?
We got another part.
You see, this is where I think like we can actually look at this, and there's actually from Christians belief here that these don't have to be these like giants wandering the earth the size of Babe, the ox, and Paul Bunyan. They could have just been perceived that way, and through mythology, the minds of the people are going to be much more prone to make them in a larger than large status, but doesn't necessarily disprove that our interpretation or the three different interpretations of that are untrue. Just means because you're taking the most fantastical version of it, you're saying, well, because of this fantastical version, I'm just going to reject it straight out. I'm not even going to look at that. Maybe there is this other explanation that these were just men, but men from the wrong bloodline, men from a desire of evil, men that shouldn't have, that God did not want going this direction. And I know not everybody on this panel agrees with that, but if you start looking at it that way, now we're not in the fantasy land anymore, right? And it can very well be interpreted that way.
Probably, my guess would be that it's just, if you look at anything, everything, it's advertising, right? Think about titling a YouTube video. Think about making a thumbnail. Everything is hyped up. That human instinct is pretty universal. I got to think that they were doing the same thing back then to make the stories invigorate, or that's just really what I chalk it up to. I think that's the most logical explanation when we find an old story that seems fantastical.
So kind of like drama to cue people into the story, to keep people entertained.
Right.
It makes no surprise to me that a drama queen would make that statement.
Is it Cope Harder cleaner?
Shots fired.
Damn, he must be a Rob Glenn
Clean.
fan.
Yeah. Are you cranky?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I was just stating a fact. It doesn't surprise me that a drama queen would make that statement.
That was a pretty dramatic statement of you. Do you disagree that people are enticed by drama?
No, I don't disagree with that. Some
Okay.
people are.
So you were just taking a shot because you're cranky?
Wasn't taking a shot.
Mm.
Oh, that was only me, so I apologize for that.
I need a shot.
I mean, this is kind of something interesting. It's something we alluded to prior in some of the other conversations as well, right? So, I mean, if we were to look at Genesis, right, and the 7 days it took to create the world, and if you were to take the stance that, I mean, let there be light, sounds a lot like the Big Bang, right? I mean, you could say, hey, maybe God didn't just puff everything together in 7 days. Maybe that 7 days, because he's timeless, it's just put into human comprehension, because we couldn't, especially back then, think of like infinity very well as an average person. So maybe that whole Big Bang and the evolution of us and Adam and Eve being dropped here happened over millions and millions of years. He made the Big Bang, that was let there be light. He created the planets. He created the whole physics that actually created the ferment and the land. Right now, we're not in a fantastical story anymore. We're actually, and if you look at how everything came about, it's in the same order, right? And this is before they even understood physics and before they knew about the Big Bang. It's very ironic that they actually work in the same order. Now, if that happened, and this is fantastical, and this is not Bible study, this is just a crazy idea out there, and I kind of heard Cleaner allude to it in a previous episode, and it goes to all these other religions or gods that you guys keep on talking about, is when we're actually looking at the Jews escaping Egypt, right? There's Moses going against the Pharaoh there, and he's got his magicians, and he's saying, basically, you have to drop all your gods over me. I am the main god. Beth also alluded to this by saying little g gods and big G gods. In a sense, maybe there was a war, and this, I'm going outside the Bible. This is not in the New Testament, the Old Testament, but there is some suggestions where God was literally fighting Pharaoh, and Pharaoh had his guys that had their little G's, and they were performing magic. And maybe they were doing magic like a magician today. Maybe they were doing magic from their little gods. Maybe there was this giant battle up there where God's like, you know what? I'm taking over all the little G's. I'm the big G. This is how it's going to go. It's a crazy idea, but yeah, he wanted to become the big G, right? And I mean, there's a little bit of alluding that in Beth, and I think Cleaner, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in one of the past episodes you kind of said, hey, maybe this was his step up to be like, this is how it is.
Well, coming from the atheistic viewpoint of things, trying to come in and understand the religious text and religious context and having just that viewpoint, looking at it from there. Yeah, it's like, what are we seeing happen, right? We're seeing a story depicted of like godlike beings having some kind of war, and a lot of Bibles say that God says He's a jealous God, and so it's kind of like there's an understanding that there may have been some kind of fight or something like that, but I don't even know if it comes down to that necessarily, because from the religious point of view, there's one God. Everything under that is, I guess you would call a demigod or a supernatural being of some kind from our viewpoint, something we don't understand, but it's not God for damn sure.
And I would say for the two Tylers and Taylors here, right? I mean, ultimately, when you're going against this, right? It's not the idea that, well, there's all these other gods that people claim to be, that's just all used in defense. That it's not that Christians are marketing, in which they do, right? I mean, part of our whole book is spread the word. That's a marketing message. I could totally concede to that. I don't think it's a marketing message out of anything bad. I think we do it in a good
not
thing,
a bad thing,
right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, the claim, all the other claims you're making are essentially based off of the first one, the major one. Just saying, I don't find this top level guy creating everything as any possibility, and now I'm going to use everything underneath that because this is my big thing. That's just not something feasible. Like, it had to be this Bison Hicks crossing over a barrier, creating a Big Bang, or it has to be that. There is no possibility that there could be any intelligent design in this. It's true random design.
No, that's not my position at all. I think that first of all, I don't believe in Big Bang any more than I believe in creationism. The Big Bang was developed by a Catholic priest, so they're really the same thing in my mind. Where I'm at is, I don't know what the things I don't know, but these stories don't. There's no compelling reason for me to think that these stories are more legit, or legit enough that that's likely it. So
Well,
it does.
I was just curious, Dusty. Have you looked at any of the new James Webb Space Telescope stuff that they've been finding near what they think is the center of the universe? Like dude, it's crazy. It's actually showing the Big Bang could not have fucking happened, not as they originally theorized it.
Like I've said, I said this, I guess, probably a few episodes ago. I think that probably what the truth is, what reality is beyond our comprehension, and that all these explanations that we have, both conventional science and religion, I think that they're just kind of simplistic.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, actually. There, I think that's a very good faith and fair way to kind of frame. I mean, even when you're talking about like a concept like God, right? Like we couldn't have a full understanding. We could only have our three-dimensional understanding of it to try and grasp at what it is, right? So these other things that we're talking about, the Nephilim and the giants, so to speak. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities it could be. Looking at it from a scientific view, I mean, there's so many different possibilities. Like Tyler said, these may have been creations in some way that were larger than life, and in religious text, God telling us that these shouldn't have existed was letting us know that we shouldn't be keeping these things in existence. We shouldn't be crossbreeding with them. Monster human crossbreeding is obviously something that we all biologically feel is wrong, like animal breeding. Like it's like you know what I'm saying.
Hey, don't you put words in my mouth? Don't you put words in my mouth?
Put that cake in your mouth.
No, and I mean, this is kind of where I was going with, right? Is I agree with you, Cleaner, to what you said to Taylor, in the sense that I don't know if it's the Big Bang. It's probably something like that, but we don't know. I don't know how the universe was created. I don't think any of us actually know. I think maybe someday we might. And I think through God's grace, he wants us to find that. But my point being is, and I'm glad you kind of said, yeah, we don't know, right? But if you're just against this top thing and you look for everything to all the
What do you mean?
fantastical stuff that you can definitely misprove, and I can say that from my side too, right? I'm looking at this top thing as being true and trying to use everything I can to make it
Remind me
true.
what the top thing is. The top
God,
thing is
right?
God.
It's God, right?
Yeah. You have a conclusion and you're trying to construct support for it.
Well, here, I mean, I actually asked the same questions you did, right? Like, I was like, and I have a hard time with giants, right? Now, I don't think Beth does, and that's okay too, right? And I could be wrong, but when I explore it, sorry,
I
Beth, I
haven't
don't
seen
really
one.
the point.
I haven't seen one. I'm just saying.
But
No, no, no,
the
no.
giant she's had a hard time with, yeah.
You're probably the
I
only
saw-
one going to heaven here, so I mean, it's fine.
I don't think any of us really would have a hard time with giants. We just attack them fuckers like Lilliputians did with Gulliver.
The closest I've seen was like a 7-foot something skeleton at the Mutter. However, I don't know. I think that it's naive to think that there isn't something, even if we're just looking back at antiquity, that ties all of these different beliefs together.
There is.
There has to be a reason. Well, sure,
'Cause humans
sure.
mingled.
And here's the thing: is it's too much to say that like they all just come up with with a similar shared delusion.
Why is that too much? We've got
Across
similar
multiple
architecture.
continents.
We've got. Have you looked at architecture? That's similar across continents.
Sure.
In some ways,
But
yeah.
again, you'd have to travel and yeah, in some ways. But
So
we're talking about like there were actual like rituals where even in Mesopotamia where they would take out young women and lay them out on ziggurats as offerings hoping that they'd get banged by an angel so that they could create essentially an individual that would have these extra powers that could then supplement their military for conquering or even just for guarding their own nations or winning the Olympics. Joking there.
I mean, humans are humans are humans. The fact that we have similar developments in different parts of the world tells me more about the nature of humans than it does about the truthiness of the thing, right? Language developed everywhere, clothing, architecture. I mean, agriculture. All these things developed and cross-contaminated, and I don't know. They're like the fact that you've got angel stories across the globe does actually literally nothing for me to prove its reality. Now,
well, I get that. I'm kind of curious. Like, do you think that like I get there's like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, like stories that are just they don't seem to have any kind of air of truth to them. But I mean, would you think that it's fair to say that there's at least a portion of stories that have like some air of truth to them, like people saw something and so they tried to explain it with a story? And like you said, yeah, I agree, people dramatize things to make the story bigger than life and so that other people will read it. And I don't think it's unfair to say that may have been done in some stories. Now I wouldn't necessarily say it within the Bible because I couldn't speak on that. I wasn't there. I don't know, but
so I guess I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I'm just asking, do you think there's like some air of truth to some stories, even some biblical stories perhaps, that explain, different creations, different quote unquote abominations, people, things like that?
So, I mean, as far as truth in the Bible, I think you weren't asking about this, but there's definitely like historical figures and right, there's facts of history in some parts of the Bible. I don't remember where I heard it. I heard somebody say that they believe the Bible has a lot of truth, but not a lot of facts. And so I think that's actually how I would probably look at it. I think there's a lot of truth, but I don't think that, say, the creation story, for instance, I don't think that that's literal. I think it's a metaphor, and I think that I don't know why that's hard for a lot of Christians, maybe not you guys, but a lot of Christians to accept because that's how Jesus spoke. It would make sense if the whole Bible was constructed such. But
I get that, and I think like with the creation thing specifically, it's much like the Big Bang, where there's so much that goes into it that there's a lot of people that will just accept the Big Bang as a thing, right? Or God is a thing that created stuff, because there's a lot that goes into the creation side of it, and not everybody out there can be like a creation expert. So I think it's fair to say that some people just take it on faith that like the Big Bang happened or God created things or whatnot based on their worldview.
I mean, there's a lot in the Bible about the shepherd and the sheep, right? And humanity is really good at being sheep. I mean, we love to just to follow anything that makes sense that comes across our ears without investigation. And
we like to outsource the hard part of thinking and deciding.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I mean, this is what we're trying to do, and one of the reasons even bringing up Nephilim and the giants is because I think when somebody dislikes something, right, they're gonna go after their interpretation of what they hate the most, right, and they're gonna extrapolate it and blow it up bigger than maybe necessarily what it is, right? Whenever I'm doing a debate and somebody knows I'm Christian, they'll go into an attack on some Bible verse that they actually don't know the context around. They don't know what the words are before and the words after. Right, and they'll come up with their own conflated story of that particular line, saying this is why I'm a horrible person. Right. In this particular case, we're not actually. I don't think anybody's ever attacked me in the debate on the Nephilim, but it is one of those things where somebody's like, the Nephilim is just too crazy. I can't believe the rest of the story. Right. And this is one of the reasons I like having these discussions and not being a sheep. I still accept that there's a shepherd, and I still can talk to the people that I believe are the shepherds. But at the same time, I just don't want to be a blind sheep. I do want to understand. I'll die. I know for a fact. Last debate, when we opened the open panel, somebody was like, "You've been a Christian for 10 years and you still don't get it." That appalls me. I'm like, there's people that have been studying their whole lives trying to understand the universe and they don't get it. There's people who've been studying the Bible, pastors that still don't get it, right? I don't think because you're diving into it and saying and admitting you don't understand it in 10 years is anything bad. If anything, I think it's actually part of the true heart of what God created.
Absolutely agree. And I think that people who do that shit, it's bullshit. They have doubt as well, and so they're
it's impossible to know the absolute truth of things that happened thousands of years ago, and even thousands of years before that, right?
That doesn't stop people from claiming.
Sure, of course not. Everybody wants.
I tell you what I could probably do, and it'd probably be much more entertaining, is I could probably do an hour each week before each episode and just go to all the apologetics out there, Christian apologetics, for whatever the topic is, and they all have a really good answer how to tear down every atheist, with some sort of explanation, right? That would be an easy show, right?
Vybe, you realize that a few minutes ago you just explained how you have a conclusion and you're searching for supporting evidence with the God thing.
Yeah, I'm searching to understand better. But I started that off with saying I'll probably die, and I'm pretty sure I'll die not knowing.
But did Jesus say the truth shall set you free, or is that one of those cleanliness is next to God? Is it? If you have a conclusion already determined when you're searching for evidence to support that only, then you're not searching for truth. You're searching for what you want.
Well, people want to know the truth, so I would think that looking at as many sources as possible is a good place to start for that, right?
Sure, that's not what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to the willingness to accept, to follow the evidence or what you find where it leads, instead of just rejecting things.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually, Dusty. I think that's fair to say, and I would even say majoritatively people are lazy, and so they accept an answer and don't really look into it themselves or read about it themselves or research it. So I get what you're saying, and I wouldn't disagree with that. But I think that's why like like you debate a lot and you do some decent debates, and when you dive into something, you tend to do some research on it ahead of time, and that's why people watch what you make, because when you dive into something, you give a little more information, a little like things like that, right? And so we have storytellers, much like when we get into a debate, we debate something. Well, we're coming with the information we've learned and we've gathered, much like storytellers come with the information they've learned, they've gathered, and produce a story from it. And like I wouldn't necessarily say that what they're saying is ever factually a lie, right? Like I
Okay.
would say, well, I'm saying I wouldn't say that the story is necessarily a lie. I would say that I could understand some exaggeration or even some diminutive of the story, like them taking it to a lesser degree in some things. Like I understand some things are just so horrible for people to hear that we kind of sum it up. Like a lot of military vets do this when they come home from war and they've done horrific things. People ask, "How was it?" Vet goes, "It was bad." And that's about it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Like you may minimize or you may make things bigger depending on what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to gather more attention to the story or divert some attention away from something, or just simply not talk about some things that are absolutely horrific. So I would agree that I do think that people accept these things majoritively because they're too lazy to look into them themselves. But within like how the story is constructed, I do think there's something to be said about dramatizing or under dramatizing a story based upon your outcome that you're wanting.
As well as depending on the situation, who's in the right and the wrong. Like who the winner is, who the loser is. Every story is going to have those influences as well. A perfect example is, uh, were the Israelites, were they exodus out under, God's guidance, or were they thrown out by the Egyptians for being a menace? You know what I'm saying? Were they there taking over the land, or were they there as slaves? Um, each side is going to be written very differently. And so I think when it comes down to a lot of these, like, especially when you're looking at some of the more, uh, some of the things that we view as probably being more like mythology, um, we need to look at who's writing it and what, like you were saying,
That's what I was
why
just
and
about to
what
say.
purpose.
Is what is I was about to ask Vybe what he thinks the purpose of writing any of this stuff was. What are they trying to capture? I think it's messages, right? It's like it's deeper meanings
Yeah,
more
for
than it
sure.
is,
I mean, so we believe that, that these words that we read were God breathed through other people, right? We believe that some of them are stories, some of them are parables, some of them are historical accounts, right? When we look at the Gospels, we believe that those are historical accounts. Um, I, and some are stories and metaphors for how we should live. Jesus loved to talk in parables. Um, so the Bible consists of many different types of writings, right? And based on how historians write, that's how we base on whether it's historical record or not. Based on how parables are written, this is how we determine whether that's a parable or not. Are all of these literal? I think pretty much every Christian agrees. No, not every story in the Bible is literal. However, I do believe that some people would debate that some are literal. I think some people would say Genesis is 100% literal, and some would say actually no, it's not literal. I think there is some contention there.
That's fair. I think what it comes down to for all of us is deciding who it is that we trust to give us the best representation and understanding of the faith that we're choosing to believe in. That really is kind of what it comes down to, is belief. It's faith.
Yeah, some of it is the faith part is the most fantastical part about it, right? And I've said this before. For those that are in faith, they kind of feel like, well, I don't even have to prove my faith. But where Dusty would go is, well, my faith actually isn't faith or a message from God or my connection to the Holy Spirit. It's a part of brainwashing. And he'll list out the tenets of brainwashing, right? I got that. I would think that
I'm not
somebody.
trying to insult you, bro. I just
No, no,
think
no,
that
no,
you
no,
should
no,
look at
no, no.
that.
No, you're. I mean, I know you're using it as one of your defense tactics, right? Like, hey,
I mean, it's
I
not
can
a
prove it.
tactic. It's really what I think. I really think you guys are brainwashed.
Well, okay, so here's the thing about brainwashing. It's a tool. So, like all tools, you can use it for negative things or for positive things. It just depends on what it is that your intent is behind the usage of the tool.
So you're saying that you're okay with being brainwashed if somebody did it for a good reason? If they thought, you know that the brainwashed person is it's involuntary, right? So it always
Not
includes
always.
a violation. It always includes a violation of will, unless you brainwash yourself, which people can't do. But
It doesn't. Yeah, that right there. You saying that right there means it's monolithically not always right a violation of will, because there are people who choose to accept the brainwashing. There are people who choose
once
to
they've
accept
already
it,
been
and that's
brainwashed,
based off of not
you would
necessarily,
you would have to
not
choose to
necessarily after they've
pursue
been
the
brainwashed.
brainwashing yourself in order for it to be truly voluntarily. If you're already brainwashed and then you're like, oh yeah, I know I'm brainwashed, I want to be brainwashed, so well, you're already brainwashed. It doesn't fucking your decision at
Yeah,
that
no, no.
point
I'm
about it
I'm
doesn't
saying
matter.
when you're stepping into something and you haven't been brainwashed, you're choosing to do something. Like, okay, so a lot of people will say that our military members are brainwashed into a certain way of doing things. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, because it is factually a breakdown of your worldview and a rebuilding of what you do for our nation, for our military, to be utilized in our construct of war, in our construct of defense of the nation. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing, though. People voluntarily enter into that knowing that's going to be something that happens to them because it's an entailment of it. And so, like I said, I think brainwashing is a tool. It's the intent of evil or good that is more important in the brainwashing itself. So saying someone was brainwashed is kind of like, basically what I'm saying is, like, if you just say someone was brainwashed, like, that's kind of stupid. Like
No, it's not.
yeah, no, it definitely is. If you
No,
aren't saying they
you're
were
coping because you know you're
positively,
doing right.
no, I'm not. I'm giving you an understanding of my position on this. Is that if you're saying someone, if you're saying someone is brainwashed in a negative way, then that's something to have a conversation about. If you say someone is brainwashed in a positive way, that's something to have a conversation about. But saying that someone had a tool used on them, like a
Hmm.
doctor uses a stethoscope on you, I think is being disingenuous and
It
saying
remo-
something with a
if
negative
somebody else
bias attached
brainwashes
to it.
you, no, if somebody else brainwashes you, they're training you. They're removing a component of free will. That is always an invasive attack on a person's autonomy.
Unless
It can,
somebody chooses it voluntarily.
right. So I would say something like
So
a
it's not
soldier.
always.
So I would agree with like soldiers, or when you join a frat and get hazed or whatever. Those forms of brainwashing are entered into voluntarily. I would say there's. I
Sure.
would say I don't know that
The
it's for
same
the
same
best of the
thing with
individual,
religion,
but
though.
it's their choice, right?
I
That's
would
their
say the
choice.
same thing with religion. People
Only
enter into that because they accept that brainwashing is
only
the
if
social construction they want to adhere
mhm.
to,
Only
because
if
they
they
see
can
the net
truly enter
positive.
into it. So if you were raised in the church, though, you don't have the opportunity to make that choice.
And I don't necessarily always call
Not
that brainwashing either. Accepting of a thing is not
Well,
necessarily brainwashing.
I don't expect any of the Christians to agree with me when I say that it's brainwashing. Really, I was just saying that I'm not. It's not a tactic, is what I was saying. It's actually what I believe.
yeah, I understand that's what you believe. I think that um, there in most churches, right? Most, I'm qualifying most. Um, they do give you at least, I think every teenager ends up rebelling against their faith at some point in time in their life, and it's not like they get dragged back in kicking and screaming, with some exceptions. Okay, there's some that absolutely do that. Um,
If you program somebody's subconscious to believe a thing, it doesn't matter if they rebel or not. You program them to believe the thing. That you can
Well,
just.
sure. Do you
I
think
mean,
that we do that with our children when we're raising them?
we do that,
yeah,
but religion seems to be the only one where we train our children to, maybe not the only one, probably patriotism to a large degree, where we
I
train
was
our
about to
children
say
to
that.
believe.
What about
Yeah,
Republicans and Democrats, and what
right,
about
right.
like
No,
So
that I
all
agree,
the things that we brainwash our children
but
to?
not to the same degree, because religion has levels of uh, removal from reality that even politics doesn't have. But yeah,
what's your qualifier for what is brainwashing?
um, you want like a thing, like black, white, red, blue, the line. I can drop the brainwashing, the link to the
Well,
brainwashing stages so
the
that you
reason
can see it
I
again.
the reason I ask that is because there's a lot of things that are attributed to someone being brainwashed, but all we're doing is teaching someone something that we understand to be true. Like if I'm
No.
teaching my
Yeah.
son math, I'm not trying to brainwash him. But the way that you're talking, it almost sounds like you would add math into the list of constructs that we are brainwashing into our children, which I think is ridiculous. But I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's what you're trying to say, though.
It's not.
Well, following the law too, right? Like if you decide to steal from your neighbor, you will be punished. If you decide not to follow this rule of our religion, you will be punished. If you decide to, hit the kid at school, you will be punished. I mean, they're all kind of based on the same thing, right? I mean, we're doing these things, whether it's a societal construct, a religious construct. And by the way, the societal construct that we brainwash our kids lines up pretty much 90% with the Christian construct as well. There's probably a variance of 10% in there. So whether you're brainwashing them with Christian or non-Christian secularists, you're doing the exact same thing.
I don't. I think it's disingenuous to call like all of that brainwashing. There may be a small percentage, but
I agree too, but
I couldn't attribute the large portion of what humans do and what humans are choosing to do within their lives to just brainwashing.
Um, hold on a second. I don't remember what the link I found last time was pretty good and easy, and I'm not finding the one. There are steps of brainwashing. What is it, like an 8-step process that was developed when POWs came home from
Yep.
Korea, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, you sent it
And
last week. I actually read it.
if you still do you still have that handy?
It's going to be in my history from last Sunday.
If you still have it handy, that'd be great. If not, I can find it. But anyways, no. When I say brainwashing, I'm not just saying teaching, right? There's specific steps involved in it, including
Okay, fair enough.
Isolation. Isolation's a big one. Isolation,
Punishment,
repetition,
reward.
punishment, rewards. Right. The whole system. Condemnation. Past face to salvation.
Dependency.
Right. Yeah. And it really is. Anyways, I think it describes religion perfectly.
I think it describes raising children the way that
You
the way
don't
you
know
got it
what
framed
the
so
fuck
far.
it is. You haven't seen it. How do you think that?
Well, based off of what you told me so far, it just describes raising children.
Yeah, the one that you gave was, and I'll share it to everybody, not just the back chat. Was from How Stuff Works, but um, I can share links, right? I should be able to.
Yeah,
I
it hit
think
chat.
so.
I just
Yeah.
pulled it up.
Yeah, I figured leave that to everybody. But yeah, I mean, the whole brainwashing thing too is like just started off with one human figuring out how he can manipulate another human, and then somebody finally like documenting it step by step. I don't think that the church or parents ever actually like sat down and prescribed to creating a brainwashing method for those that they wanted to follow the religion or for how they wanted to raise a good child, right? However, somebody eventually like documented like this is the perfect way to do it. And I think through society and evolution, it's a characteristic that you will find that everybody does for a better society, right? Not necessarily to convince people that something that is real is not real. However, those that have
Why do you-
documented it have probably figured
why
out
do
how
you
to
think
actually
that?
do that.
I think brainwashing tends to be subjective to a degree where if you work really hard and you convince somebody to come over to your side, it's something to be celebrated. If your opposition works really hard and convinces somebody to come over to their side, they've been brainwashed. I think a lot has to do with using pejoratives to summarize your opposition and using words of welcoming when somebody switches their views to something that you find to be more ideal. Like if you spent a whole day arguing with a religious person, Dusty, and you got him over to your side, and a religious person accused them of now being brainwashed by atheism, you'd be like, no, I convinced them with merit. And I'm sure that's how a religious person feels when they recruit somebody as well.
Brainwashing involves emotional manipulation, right? I think that if you remove that, you can just present somebody with information, right? And it's not brainwashing. Now, you can't ever really entirely remove all emotional considerations.
MK Ultra proved that wrong.
Prove what wrong?
Yeah, I mean, brainwashing, you're overgeneralizing. Brainwashing could just be manipulating somebody through lying, and maybe there is evoking emotions, but in this instance, you're also like, they're lying to you to get you into their club so that you can give more money to their churches so that they can live like kings, or they're lying to you to get you to
it doesn't.
It goes far beyond that. It goes far beyond that. Actual people who are actually brainwashed, like it requires a deprogramming because their entire worldview becomes
you're talking like Reek
by this. Not a matter. It's not something as simple as you're coming to this church and you're going to give us your money.
Yeah, like Ramsey
Bolton. They would literally be in fear of what's going to happen to them should they not.
Yeah, like Ramsey Bolton with Theon Greyjoy turning him into Reek, cutting his dick off and all that. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that's not happening in any regard. People are just, we're having the free market of ideas here. I'm just saying.
Well, I think you're all talking about different types of brainwashing, because there's a number of different types that they've come to understand and call under the umbrella of brainwashing itself. And while I would say it would be disingenuous to say that Dusty's wrong about the type he's talking about, the majoritatively emotional manipulation type thing, there's all different kinds. There's different tactics, but it is a tool. Is the thing. The intent of what it is that is being done is more important, I think, than whether or not the thing is done. If the intent is to produce something good versus evil, that's where the conversation really comes in.
If I have
and
to
plays
put
a
you
part.
in a state of fear for you, or guilt for you to accept something that otherwise in a healthy mental state you would not accept, I don't believe that can be benevolent.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, because I understand that sociopaths or psychopaths may have a healthy mental state for them that's different from our healthy mental state. And so for them to get them to understand something, you may have to employ tactics that other people would look at as horrific if you were to use it on a normal person. By definition,
that would not be a healthy mental state.
Not by our definition, but see, you were saying it's subjective. So diving into what you're saying...
What subjective?
You were saying it's subjective to the person.
Is?
The brainwashing is subjective to the person. No, I didn't.
You said that.
I'm actually just going off everything you're telling me right now.
Now let's grant, right? Like this, how stuff works article is laid out is very,
I think I'm just
as Dusty's saying, it's got confession, it's got the you're a sinner, it's got rebirth.
Yeah, that's kind of a massive umbrella that they put of things under brainwashing, which is why I said,
do you want to see the thing first before you start arguing against it?
There we go. How's that?
I looked at it already a little bit and found the section that was explaining something much akin to us raising children. So they would put us raising children under brainwashing.
There we go. I fixed it.
According to this article.
But if somebody who's not your parent does the same thing to you, do you agree that that's not appropriate?
It would depend on the intent, and it would depend on what it is they're trying to teach you.
See, you can justify anything.
Well, I mean, you could justify this. I would say that almost in the sense, if God were to create us, and He wanted us to see who our true self was, He wanted to admit our mistakes, He wanted us to be reborn, and He wanted us to be the best we could be, would He have not built us that if somebody threw what you're now labeling as brainwashing, because it works on our biology, because we were built this way to want to confess, to not carry our guilt, to want to be reborn, to want to be better, to want to be our whole selves, that we found God's what He put in us. the people that are using it for another reason found how he built us and figured out exactly how to use what God created for us to come to him against him, so that like the soldiers can go,
So
okay,
God
now we're
wanted us
gonna
to brainwash
use
each other.
how God made people, and we're gonna use it against him to break them down for the worst amount of thing. Wouldn't it make sense if he created us for us to fall into these things? Now you've thrown a label on it, but it actually sounds like confessing your sins. Like I've never, like, by the way, going through this brainwashing, like I when I read it 2 weeks ago, that's why I wasn't scared of sharing it. I definitely could see, and I know how we work, like in the sports arena. I used to train junior Olympic gymnastic girls, right? And we tear them down and then we build them up to make a gold winning Olympian. Like we follow the same structure, the whole tear down thing.
Yeah, I have a friend in college who trained to be an Olympic gymnast, and that shit's wild.
Oh yeah, I left the sport and I didn't become a professional coach because of how bad it was. And
well, maybe with that understanding, Vybe, maybe with that understanding, you understand what I'm saying when I'm saying like what they are putting forth in this How Stuff Works ad, whatever you want to call this bullshit. It does kind of encompass us teaching our children. I mean, it's got it laid out there. That is what we do as parents when we're teaching our children. We do institute emotional responses to some degree, good, bad behavior, good, bad responses, rewards, punishments, all of that, right? We do all of these things when we're teaching our children. So what you're saying, yeah, I don't really care if that's the context. If you're giving me a framing,
religions are not an institution is not your parent.
I get you want to attack religions with this. I'm just trying to show you how it's ridiculous to kind of put everything
you're
human
desperately
beings
trying
do.
to defend religion from something that's plainly obvious.
No. I'm trying to say the umbrella that you've put everything that is brainwashing into almost encompasses everything we people do with each other on a daily basis.
Unreal.
But it does. Looking at this article, it does. In relationships, if your wife is behaving like a single woman and you don't appreciate that and it's against your boundaries, you're going to tell her that that's against your boundaries, and to some degree that warrants emotional manipulation and control tactics, right?
What about
so
isolation?
I mean, you're like what you're doing is definitely framing a lot of what we do in human society under brainwashing, which I think is disingenuous.
I know you do. Let's talk about brainwashing. One of the steps of brainwashing. You say we all do it all the time, everywhere. Any of us been isolated? Any of us isolated each other since we've been in this interaction?
I said based off of what you're saying up there on your How Stuff Works. Well, up on the tab that I've got, How Stuff Works. Your little
I don't
article
know which one you're looking at.
You're acting like a real drama queen right now.
The one that Vybe linked. I'm just trying to understand how you get from the topic of brainwashing to like it. I mean, and it really does encompass almost everything we do. If you're just teaching someone something because they want to learn about it, that's encompassed under this umbrella of what How It Works says is brainwashing as well.
Okay, so
that
assault
was
on
the one that you
assault
dropped
on
to me
identity.
last week or 2 weeks ago.
Right. So you're saying that assault on identity, guilt, self-betrayal, breaking point, leniency, compulsion to confess, channeling of guilt, releasing of guilt, progress and harmony, and final conclusion. This is not shit that normal people do all day, you psycho.
Hold on.
Yeah, what I think you're being disingenuous about is the part that says this process often involves, and then it goes on to list a number of things. So it doesn't even give you a specific as to what it involves, which literally gives us an all-encompassing umbrella of everything we fucking do in society.
I'm reading it. Lipton ultimately defined a set of steps involved in the brainwashing cases he studied, and that's what I just listed.
Hold on,
I don't
got a
see anything about
question
Lipton in here.
about
Well, I don't know what to tell you.
brainwashing.
Word search it.
Would using a shock collar on your dog to train it be considered a form of brainwashing?
Why did it move?
I would say no, not in this particular brainwashing, but I would actually say that's another form of it, because I would basically say that the whole idea when people are thinking about brainwashing is rewiring the brain, right? And we're rewiring the dog's brain with a shock collar.
Yeah,
So,
I think the umbrella that's proposed in this little How Stuff Works thing is just a little too big.
Okay.
And I definitely didn't feel like I went through half of these things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously have to concede salvation is in there. Salvation
we can look at the concept of original sin and needing to be
admitting
saved,
sin
and we
is
can
in
say,
there, right? Basically, admitting your mistakes is in there.
Yeah.
You can also, this is like when I was
This is
debating,
exactly the religious salvation story. Exactly.
No, it's not. It's not exactly how we're doing it in our church.
I mean, to be fair though, Dusty, like what you're proposing is literally the breakdown of somebody else's religious view side of the story, which is brainwashing by the definitions in this article.
Yeah, I was going to point that out too. It's like you're basically tearing down and saying you are not a Christian. This isn't right, right? You're following the same brain, but this is just, it's a label based on psychology, right? And what we've seen.
You're still a Christian. Every part of me thinks you're still a Christian.
Well, that doesn't dispute the fact that you're using brainwashing, which has a negative connotation, to elicit an emotional response in people that you're talking to in order to get them to respond in a certain way, which is manipulating them and then trying to teach them something different, which is under the definition of brainwashing that you've given us. That's brainwashing. So you're trying to brainwash them right now.
No, I'm holding up a pen.
But that's your definitional.
And I'm saying this is a pen, and you're like, no, it's not. It's love. No, there's a pen, right? So I don't give a fuck what you do with it or how it changes your identity. But when I hand out these brainwashing steps, and then I look and I say these two things are the same, you can try to gaslight me all you want because you're gaslit and brainwashed. But it's not going to work. That's what we're.
Well, again, you're using words that had negative connotations to try and elicit an emotional response. But I'm not going to give you any emotions because I don't have any to give you, bud. I'm sorry.
That wasn't emotion. I think you just gave some emotion. Give me that loosh.
I'll give you an emotion, boy. I got a size 15.
Centimeters.
All right. Well, we're approaching the final 10 minutes of this little 2-hour journey that we take every week. We went from giants, Nephilims, fantastical stories, or actual provable points if we take away the fantasy. Could this actually be real? I feel like it could be real if we look at the characters in the Bible, as there were kings that may have been looked at as giants for their position, for their stature, that it could still, in the science view, really be there. However, they could have been giants, and even though we don't see them today, and since they were defeated, that could be true too. I do believe that if we look on today's, I think if we look at today's world and try to throw logic on that, you could map that, right? But ultimately, I think we all agree on this. Nobody knows. There is no perfect definition in the Bible. Any of them could be right. We all could be wrong. One of us could be right and the rest of us wrong. I don't know. It is interesting to look into. But I would like to go around the panel, let everybody kind of put in their final thoughts on that, starting in the upper left with Cleaner, on your idea. And I know we jumped into brainwashing. If you guys want to throw some of that in there too, but please start off with the original topic in the Nephilim, your thoughts on that. If you want to touch on the brainwashing thing, feel free to.
I think we kind of derailed a little bit from where we were going, but I do think that to some degree, what Dusty's saying isn't disingenuous. All right, there are some religions, there are some people who utilize brainwashing to try and get someone to believe a religion, to believe in Nephilim or giants, to believe in whatever, however they do things. I do think that to understand this, we would have to have some trust in someone whenever we're talking about a topic like the giants, the Nephilim, God himself. The whole understanding of religion. We'll have to pick and choose who we want to trust to teach us about these things, because all we can do as human beings is trust others on what they're teaching us. We can't necessarily always come to our own conclusions without learning something from someone else, i.e. raising children to learn to speak, read and write, do math. They trust us in that. So we are going to have to figure out who we trust to teach us these things. And I think that's what it really all comes down to when we're talking about religions or anti-religions or whatnot.
All right, well said. Beth?
So yeah, This one got off in the weeds, but it was still interesting. I think that there's a lot of really interesting information out there that is still, it's still relevant. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have ended up with so many civilizations that have such close stories, with the only exception being, is this a God with an uppercase G, like Abrahamic religions believe, or several lowercase g gods, which actually do kind of run parallel to the Nephilim story in the Watchers. I think there's still a lot more to look at with it. There's some really cool arguments going on about it. I wish we could have got Phil on tonight. He would have done this such better justice than I did. And
Phil
McCracken? Yeah. It doesn't help that, man, I fell asleep watching the new video you uploaded and woke up like 15 minutes before this started. Which, by the way, I woke up like laughing in my sleep at something I was listening to on that stream. But anyways, so, and then I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's my stripper name.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Vybe. It's always interesting here. Love it.
All right. Tyler.
All right, well, I still think that Nephilim are a retelling of the Herculean story from Greece and from Roman culture. I don't think that it really fits in the Bible that well, and these beings just kind of disappeared without any telling of them in the future. Like, we don't really know. Some of them were wiped out by the flood, but others were seen after and things of that nature. Again, I can see how it lines up with stories of old, and again, it's real similar to my lived experience where, like, when I was changing in the locker room full of boys, they'd look at me and go, damn, you must be a Nephilim. Because that thing, like, you got giant's blood in you. And, you know, I know how it is, like...
Shout out to the big cocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Put away your mom's high heels, Tyler.
It's sometimes when I get erect, I lose so much blood to my head I pass out. It happens.
Tyler! Your wife needs to smack you right now. Where is she?
That's why. Which type is the universal recipient? That's why he's that blood type, so that they can just transfuse him while he's.
It's O.
He's looking it up.
He's basically saying we didn't get all the Nephilim. There's one left.
Yeah, exactly. There's still one left, but no, like I see it as a continuation. He's missing. Like realistically, like. If I don't agree with, as Vybe was saying, if I don't agree with you at the top, then these sub-arguments almost seem a little more futile because we're disagreeing at the top level about the existence in the first place and bigger contradictions than this. But it is a really interesting subject, and I don't know. I like to know more about it, and that and like the different classifications of angels and whatnot are all really super interesting. The canonicity of those, but I just don't. I don't know. You guys didn't sell me on anything today. I'll say that. I'm still lost in the woods.
All right, Taylor.
Yeah, I think that. I think it's. I don't know. I just think that there's. I think there is an interesting story. I actually do like the story. I just don't think that there's any reason to give it any more credence than, you know, wood nymphs, for instance. You know, like elves. Except that it falls in line with the Christian pantheon. Is that the right? I don't know if that's the right word. Also, I want to say, I was not being disingenuous or bad faith in anything I said here tonight. I actually think what I think. Some of you just don't like it.
All right, thank you, Taylor. Yeah, and you know, as always, here I am on one of the biggest shit shows of a Bible study out there.
That's what you signed up for.
Yeah, I don't know how I ever thought that was going to work, but I'm still going to try to make it work, and I'm not going to stop.
Have we ruined your faith yet?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Actually, every time I get ready for one of these, and the more I dig into it, like I said at the beginning here, like when I was reading through the Bible from front to back as a Christian with a science mind, A lot of my ideas started getting a lot stronger in the belief the more and more I read. However, I kept on going, but does this follow what everybody else thinks that's a Christian? And I found the majority of the time it does, but not necessarily my faith. So that makes me sometimes question, which of the Christian faiths am I supposed to be aligned with right now? But I have found nothing that in anything that I've read that has misaligned with anything in the main Christian faith, even when looking at it from a science mind. But I don't have the answers. I'm not the expert. I wish I was like one of these apologists out there that could just like trash on every single comment that somebody could make with a very expert retort, but that's not me. I'm the learning guy. Really glad to have you guys here and put your opinions in. Really glad to have all the different versions of faith out there. Very happy to have the supporters out there jumping in on the chat and giving their opinions. It's great to see Lynn's animated effigies always showing up. I just saw Abe in there. God bless you too. It's fun. We're going to keep on making it better. We're going to be getting into things that are more mainstream soon. And the things that people do contest. The reason they hate the big G and the Christianity is in some of the modern things that we do that do not align with society. So I think those are going to be some interesting discussions coming up. But we are still doing a couple more of the fantasy ones, like the flood, and the Nephilim lead into the flood. Also angels, and then we're going to start digging into the societal prescriptions of the Bible and where they conflict.
Where are you taking it?
So we're definitely going to get a lot more heated, and it's going to be a lot more interesting. But as always, I'm just out there spreading love, no matter what side you're on. Love everybody on the panel. Love all the people that hate me in chat, no matter where you are. It's just part of how we work. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Dusty, thanks for the pushback. I know I kind of came at you a little hard during our back and forth. I do that because you're offering me good pushback to talk about, and to have a debate about. So, hey, thanks for your views, and thank you for being willing to argue things with me on this. I really enjoyed it.
Brother.
Yeah, you drama
Look
queen.
at that. And they did it without borrowing Tyler's high heels. It's so awesome.
They love each other.
We're both trying to get out of here so that we can go to the strip club and see him.
They're not my high heels, they're my mom's. I look great in my mother's clothing.
I know. I was getting ready to hit that mute or that hide on stream button in case you were going to do some type of prom bomb. Nephilim this.
I knew he couldn't have gotten hit by the ceiling fan all on his own.
Don't be a monster robot crossbreeder.
The question is, were they 4 inches or 6 inches?
Oh.
He says it's 6, but it's really probably closer to 4.
Yeah, it depends on where you measure from, really, honestly. You start at the asshole.
If you stretch the tape back to your tank, you can get another
Oh
inch.
my god!
What's a giant to a midget?
I understand. I was talking about heels, right? Oh my! Why? Where do you find these people?
I think you found him for me, so.
I think I did. This is my fault.
Yeah, we're all going to be staying together in a couple of weeks, too.
I know.
Just blame it on Betty Boop.
This is going to be wild.
All right, guys. Cheers. See you on other streams throughout the week, and we'll catch you next week.
Take her easy.
All right. Be good.